The judge leaned back in his chair and whispered to the woman sitting next to him. His microphone was still on. Everyone in the room heard what he said. "She can't possibly win. Look at her. Let's just get this over with." The audience went quiet. The woman standing on stage heard every word. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was beating so fast she thought it might stop. But what happened next would change everything. Not just for her, but for millions of people watching around the world. This is the story of how one ordinary woman proved that dreams don't have an age limit. And it all started in the most unexpected place. Mary Thompson had spent the last 23 years of her life cleaning hotel rooms. Every morning, she woke up at 4:30. She packed a small lunch, usually just a sandwich and an apple. Then she took 2 buses to reach the Grand Palace Hotel in downtown Chicago. By 6 in the morning, she was already pushing her cleaning cart down long hallways, knocking on doors, and asking if anyone needed fresh towels. She was 51 years old. Her back hurt most days. Her knees made sounds when she climbed stairs, but she never complained. Not once. Because Mary understood something that many people forget. Hard work was not something to be ashamed of. It was something to be proud of. Mary had not always been a housekeeper. When she was young, back in her small hometown in Ohio, she had dreams. Big dreams. She used to sing in her church choir every Sunday. People would come from other towns just to hear her voice. Her mother always said that God had given Mary a gift, a voice that could touch people's souls. But life has a way of changing plans. When Mary was 24, she met a man named Robert. He was kind and funny and made her laugh until her stomach hurt. They got married within a year. Soon after, they had their first child, a daughter named Lucy. Then came their son, Thomas. And then, when Mary was 29, their youngest daughter, Grace, was born. Robert worked at a factory. Mary stayed home with the children. Money was always tight, but they were happy. They had love, and that was enough. Then everything fell apart. Robert got sick when Mary was 32. The doctors said it was cancer. They said he had maybe 6 months. He fought for 8. But in the end, the disease was stronger than his will to live. Mary held his hand in the hospital room when he took his last breath. She was 33 years old, with 3 children under the age of 10. There was no time to grieve. There was no time to feel sorry for herself. The rent was due. The children needed food. The electricity bill was sitting on the kitchen table. So Mary did what she had to do. She found a job cleaning hotel rooms, and she never looked back. For the next 20 years, she raised her children alone. She worked double shifts during holidays. She missed school plays and parent-teacher meetings because she could not afford to take time off. Every penny she earned went to her children. New shoes for Lucy, books for Thomas, dance lessons for Grace. Her own dreams disappeared somewhere along the way. She stopped singing. Not because she forgot how, but because singing reminded her of a time when life was full of possibilities. And thinking about possibilities hurt too much. By the time her children grew up and moved out, Mary was 51. Lucy was now a nurse in Seattle. Thomas worked as an accountant in New York. Grace, the youngest, had just finished college and was living in Los Angeles, trying to become a writer. Mary was proud of her children. They had turned out good. They were kind and hardworking and honest. She had done her job. But now, for the first time in decades, Mary was alone. Her small apartment felt too quiet. The walls seemed to close in on her. She would come home from work, eat dinner in front of the television, and go to bed. That was her life now. Wake up, work, come home, sleep, repeat. One evening, Grace called her on the phone. They talked about small things at first. The weather, work, what Mary had eaten for dinner. But then Grace asked a question that caught Mary off guard. "Mom, do you remember when you used to sing to us before bed?" Mary felt something stir inside her chest. Something she had buried a long time ago. "I remember," she said quietly. You had the most beautiful voice, Grace said. Mary did not know what to say, so she said nothing. There's this singing competition, Grace continued. It's called American Dream Star. It's huge, Mom. The winner gets $100,000 and a record deal. I really think you should try out. Mary almost laughed. Sweetheart, I'm 51 years old. I clean hotel rooms for a living. Those competitions are for young people, with training and fancy clothes. Not for someone like me. Someone like you? Grace's voice was firm now. Mom, you're the strongest person I know. You raised 3 kids by yourself. You never gave up, not even when things were impossible. Why should this be any different? Mary did not have an answer. After they hung up, she sat in her living room for a long time. The television was off. The apartment was silent. And for the first time in years, Mary let herself remember. She remembered singing in the church choir as a teenager. She remembered how the music made her feel alive. She remembered Robert sitting in the front row at their wedding, crying when she sang a song just for him. She remembered singing lullabies to her babies, watching their eyes grow heavy with sleep. She remembered who she used to be. That night, Mary did something she had not done in over 20 years. She sang until her voice filled the small apartment, bouncing off the walls and windows. When she finished, she was crying. But they were not sad tears. They were tears of something else. Something that felt a lot like hope. The next morning, she told herself it was a silly idea. She was too old, too ordinary, too invisible. The world had already decided what she was worth, and it was not much, but she could not stop thinking about it. A week later, Grace sent her a link to the application. Just try, she wrote. What do you have to lose? Mary stared at the screen for 3 hours. Then, with trembling fingers, she filled out the form. She attached a video that Grace had secretly recorded months ago. A video of Mary singing while washing dishes, not knowing anyone was watching. She clicked submit before she could change her mind. 3 weeks passed. Mary had almost forgotten about the whole thing. She went to work, cleaned her rooms, came home, and tried not to think about how empty her life had become. Then the letter arrived. She was sitting at her kitchen table when she opened it. Her hands were shaking so badly, she could barely read the words. Dear Mary Thompson, we are pleased to inform you that you have been selected to audition for American Dream Star. She read it 5 times to make sure it was real. Then she called Grace. I got in, she whispered. They want me to come audition. Grace screamed so loud that Mary had to hold the phone away from her ear. Mom, this is it. This is your moment. Mary was not so sure. In fact, she was terrified. But somewhere deep inside her, a small flame had started to burn. A flame she thought had gone out a long time ago. She had no idea what was waiting for her. She had no idea that in just a few weeks, she would stand on a stage in front of thousands of people, listening to a judge tell the whole world that she did not stand a chance. But Mary Thompson had been underestimated her entire life, and she was about to prove everyone wrong. The night before the audition, Mary did not sleep at all. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. What was she doing? Who did she think she was? A 51-year-old housekeeper trying to compete against young people with real talent and training. It was madness. Complete madness. She got out of bed at 3 a.m. and sat by the window. The city was quiet. The streets were empty. And Mary felt more alone than she had ever felt in her life. She thought about calling Grace and telling her she had changed her mind. She thought about throwing away the letter and pretending none of this had ever happened. Going back to her normal life seemed easier. Safer. At least there, no one could laugh at her. But then she looked at the small photograph sitting on her bedside table. It was a picture of Robert, taken just a few months before he got sick. He was smiling in that way he always did, like he knew a secret the rest of the world did not. Mary picked up the photograph and held it close. What should I do? She whispered. Of course, There was no answer. There never was. But somehow, looking at his face gave her a tiny bit of courage. Robert had always believed in her, even when she did not believe in herself. When the sun came up, Mary made a decision. She would go to the audition, not because she thought she would win, but because she owed it to herself to try. She owed it to the young girl who used to sing in church choirs and dream of something bigger. She owed it to Robert, who had loved her voice more than anything. She put on her best dress. It was a simple blue one she had bought for Thomas's wedding 5 years ago. It was not fancy or expensive, but it was clean, and it fit well. And that would have to be enough. The audition was being held at the Grand Convention Center downtown. Mary had walked past that building hundreds of times on her way to work, but she had never been inside. It always seemed like a place for important people. People who mattered. When she arrived, her heart nearly stopped. There were hundreds of people waiting outside. Young people, with perfect hair and expensive clothes. Some had voice coaches standing next to them, giving last-minute advice. Others were doing vocal exercises, their voices echoing through the air. A few were even practicing dance moves. Mary stood frozen on the sidewalk. She felt like she had walked into a different world, a world where she did not belong. A young woman bumped into her while rushing past. She could not have been older than 20. Her outfit probably cost more than Mary earned in a month. "Sorry," the girl said without looking back. Mary took a deep breath. Her hands were sweating. Her legs felt weak. Every instinct told her to turn around and go home. But she thought of Grace's voice on the phone. She thought of Robert's smile in the photograph. She walked through the doors. Inside, the convention center was even more overwhelming. Giant screens showed clips from previous seasons of the show. Cameras were everywhere. Production assistants in black shirts rushed around with clipboards, shouting instructions. The noise was deafening. Mary found the registration desk and gave her name. The woman behind the counter looked at her for a moment, then handed her a number. 437, the woman said. "Wait in the holding area until your number is called. Could be a few hours." A few hours. Mary nodded and walked toward the massive room where all the contestants were waiting. There must have been at least 500 people there. Some were sitting on the floor. Others paced back and forth nervously. A few were crying. A few were laughing too loudly. Mary found an empty corner and sat down alone. She watched the other contestants and felt smaller with every passing minute. These people had dreams too. They had worked hard. They had trained. Many of them deserved to be here far more than she did. What made her think she had any right to take up space in this room? The hours dragged on. One by one, numbers were called. Some people came back from their auditions with huge smiles on their faces. Others came back in tears. Most came back looking numb, like they were not sure what had just happened. Mary's stomach was in knots. She could not eat. She could barely breathe. Finally, after nearly 4 hours of waiting, she heard it. Number 437, Mary Thompson. Her legs almost gave out when she stood up. She followed a production assistant down a long hallway toward 2 massive doors. The assistant gave her a quick smile. "Good luck," he said. Then he pushed the doors open. Mary stepped into the audition room and felt her entire body go cold. It was huge. Much bigger than she had imagined. There were bright lights everywhere, so bright she could barely see. In front of her was a long table where 4 judges sat, looking down at papers and tablets. Behind the judges was an audience of about 200 people, all staring at her. 200 strangers, watching, waiting, judging. Mary walked to the center of the stage. Her shoes made soft sounds on the wooden floor. She could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. One of the judges looked up. His name was Daniel Crawford. He was famous. A former pop star who had sold millions of records before becoming a judge on the show. He had a reputation for being harsh, brutally honest. Some people said he enjoyed making contestants cry. He looked at Mary with an expression she knew too well. She had seen that look her whole life. It was the look people gave her when they thought she was nothing, when they thought she was invisible. Daniel glanced at his papers. Mary Thompson, he read out loud. 51 years old. Occupation: hotel housekeeper. He paused and raised an eyebrow. From Chicago. Yes, sir, Mary said. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. Daniel leaned toward the judge sitting next to him. His microphone was still on. He probably did not realize it. Or maybe he did not care. She can't possibly win, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Look at her. Let's just get this over with. The audience went completely silent. Mary heard a few gasps. She saw the other judges shift uncomfortably in their seats. One of them, a woman with kind eyes, looked down at the table like she was embarrassed. Mary felt the words hit her like a punch to the chest. Her eyes started to sting. Her throat tightened. For a moment, she could not move. She could not think. He was right. That was the worst part. He was saying what everyone was thinking, what she had been thinking herself for weeks. She was a nobody, a 51-year-old cleaning lady with no training and no business being on this stage. She should leave. Just turn around and walk away. Save herself the humiliation. Go back to her quiet apartment and her quiet life, and forget any of this ever happened. But then something shifted inside her. She thought about her children. She thought about all those years of working double shifts so they could have better lives. She thought about Robert, holding her hand in the hospital, telling her she was the strongest person he had ever known. She thought about every time someone had looked at her like she was nothing. Every time she had been ignored. Every time she had made herself small so others could feel big. No more. Mary lifted her chin. She looked directly at Daniel Crawford. And in a voice that was quiet but steady, she said 5 words. May I sing now, please? Daniel waved his hand dismissively. Go ahead. Mary closed her eyes. She took a deep breath, and she let go of everything. The fear, the doubt, the voice inside her head that had been telling her she was not good enough. When she opened her mouth, she was not Mary the housekeeper anymore. She was Mary the singer, the girl who used to make people cry in church, the woman her husband fell in love with, and she was about to show the whole world who she really was. The music started playing and Mary felt the whole world fade away. The bright lights, the staring audience, the judge who had just told everyone she could not win. None of it mattered anymore. See, in that moment, there was only Mary and the song. She had chosen a song called I Dreamed a Dream. It was from a musical she had watched many years ago with Robert. They had sat together on their old couch, holding hands. And when this song came on, Robert had looked at her and said, "This song was written for you." She never forgot those words. The first note came out soft, almost like a whisper. Mary's voice trembled slightly, and for a split second, she thought she might fall apart right there on stage. But then, something happened. Something she could not explain. The fear left her body. It was like someone had reached inside her chest and pulled out all the weight she had been carrying for 20 years. The loneliness, the exhaustion, the grief, it all lifted. And in its place was something pure. Something powerful. Her voice grew stronger. The second line of the song came out clear and full. Mary's eyes were still closed, but she could feel the energy in the room change. The whispers stopped. The rustling stopped. Even the air seemed to stop moving. By the time she reached the chorus, her voice was soaring. It filled every corner of that massive room. It bounced off the walls and the ceiling and wrapped around every single person sitting there. It was not just singing anymore. It was something deeper, something raw and honest and heartbreaking. Mary was not performing. She was telling her story. Every word carried the weight of her life. When she sang about dreams, she thought of the young girl who used to believe anything was possible. When she sang about hope, she thought of Robert's face on their wedding day. When she sang about loss, she thought of holding his hand as he slipped away from her forever. Tears started rolling down her cheeks. She did not try to stop them. She did not even notice them. She was somewhere else now, somewhere between the past and the present, between pain and healing, between who she used to be and who she was becoming. In the audience, something remarkable was happening. A woman in the third row started crying first. She covered her mouth with her hand and let the tears fall silently. Then, the man next to her. Then, the teenage girl behind them. One by one, like dominoes falling, people throughout the audience began to weep. They were not crying because the song was sad. They were crying because they felt it. Every single one of them had their own broken dreams, their own losses, their own moments when life had knocked them down, and they wondered if they would ever get back up. Mary's voice was speaking directly to that place inside them, the place they kept hidden from the world. Even the production crew had stopped moving. Camera operators stood frozen behind their equipment. Assistants forgot about their clipboards. Everyone was watching the woman on stage pour her entire soul into a song. At the judges' table, something unexpected was happening too. The woman with kind eyes, a famous singer named Patricia Wells, had tears streaming down her face. She was not even trying to hide them. The judge next to her, a music producer named William Chen, was leaning forward in his seat, his mouth slightly open, like he could not believe what he was hearing. And Daniel Crawford, the judge who had dismissed Mary just minutes ago, sat completely still. His expression had changed. The smugness was gone. The boredom was gone. In its place was something that looked almost like shame. Mary reached the final part of the song. This was the hardest section. The notes climbed higher and higher, demanding everything a singer had to give. Many professional singers struggled with this part. Many avoided it altogether. But Mary did not hold back. She threw her head back slightly and let the note fly. It was high and clear and impossibly beautiful. It hung in the air like a bird frozen in flight. And then, somehow, she pushed even higher. The audience could not contain themselves. Someone gasped out loud. Someone else whispered, "Oh my God." A man in the back row stood up, without even realizing he was doing it. The final note faded into silence. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The room was completely still, like time itself had stopped. Then the explosion came. The entire audience jumped to their feet. The applause was so loud it sounded like thunder. People were cheering and crying and hugging strangers next to them. Someone started chanting her name. Others joined in. Mary, Mary, Mary. Mary opened her eyes and saw something she never expected. 200 people standing and clapping for her, for the invisible woman, the hotel housekeeper, the nobody. She did not know what to do. Her whole body was shaking. More tears poured down her face. But these were different tears. These were tears of disbelief, of joy, of something that felt a lot like being reborn. At the judges' table, Patricia Wells was still wiping her eyes. She reached for her microphone. "Mary," she said, her voice cracking. "I have been doing this show for 7 years. I have heard thousands of auditions. And I have never, not once, felt what I just felt. That was not just singing. That was a miracle." The audience cheered even louder. William Chen leaned into his microphone next. "I don't know where you've been hiding all these years," he said. "But the world needs to hear your voice. That was absolutely extraordinary." More cheers, more applause. Mary could barely stand. Her legs felt like they might give out any second. Then came the moment everyone was waiting for. Daniel Crawford, the judge who had humiliated her, slowly picked up his microphone. The audience went quiet. They wanted to hear what he would say. They wanted to see if he would apologize. Daniel looked at Mary for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. Softer. Humbler. I owe you an apology, he said. What I said before you sang was cruel and unfair. I judged you before I knew you, and I was wrong. He paused and took a breath. That was the most beautiful thing I have heard in my entire career. You didn't just sing that song. You lived it. And you made me feel things I forgot I could feel. The audience erupted again. People were on their feet, screaming and clapping. Someone threw flowers onto the stage. Daniel was not finished. Mary Thompson, he said, looking directly at her. You asked me if you could sing. I want you to know something. You didn't just sing tonight. You changed this room. You changed me. And I believe you're going to change millions of people who watch this. He stood up from his chair. The other judges stood with him. 4 judges, all standing, all applauding the woman they had underestimated. Mary stood alone in the middle of that huge stage, surrounded by noise and light and love. She thought about her children. She thought about Robert. She thought about all those mornings waking up before dawn to clean hotel rooms. She had been invisible her whole life, but not anymore. As she walked off the stage, still shaking, still crying, she knew that everything had changed. She did not know what would happen next. She did not know if she would win the competition or if anyone would remember her name tomorrow. But she knew one thing for certain. She had found her voice again, and this time, she was never going to let it go. Mary woke up the next morning thinking it had all been a dream. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in her mind. The bright lights, the judge's cruel words, the song, the standing ovation. It felt too big to be real, too beautiful to have actually happened to someone like her. Then her phone started ringing. It was Grace, calling from Los Angeles. Mary answered, still half asleep. Mom! Grace was screaming so loud that Mary had to pull the phone away from her ear. Mom! Have you seen the internet? Have you looked at your phone? Mom! You're everywhere! Mary had no idea what her daughter was talking about. She did not use the internet much. She had a simple phone that she mostly used for calls and the occasional text message. Social media was something her children did, not her. What do you mean everywhere? Mary asked, confused. Your audition video, Mom. Someone posted it online last night. It's gone viral. Completely viral. Millions of people have watched it. Millions. Mary sat up in bed. Her heart started beating faster. That's not possible, she said. The show hasn't even aired yet. Someone in the audience recorded it on their phone, Grace explained. They uploaded it with the caption, Judge says she can't win. Then she opens her mouth. Mom, it has over 10 million views already. And it's only been 12 hours. 10 million views. Mary could not even picture what that number looked like. 10 million people had watched her sing. 10 million strangers had seen her cry on that stage. 10 million. Over the next few hours, Mary's world turned upside down. Her phone would not stop buzzing. Text messages from people she had not talked to in years. Missed calls from numbers she did not recognize. Her email inbox, which usually had nothing but bills and advertisements, was flooded with hundreds of messages. News stations wanted to interview her. Radio shows wanted her to call in. A morning talk show asked if she could fly to New York that weekend. Magazine reporters left voicemails asking about her life story. Mary sat in her small kitchen, overwhelmed and terrified. This was too much. Too fast. She was just a housekeeper. She did not know how to handle any of this. But the story was already bigger than her. The video kept spreading. 20 million views by the end of the first day. 30 million. By the second day. News websites ran articles with headlines like Hotel Housekeeper Stuns, Talent Show Judges, and The Voice That Made Simon Cowell Cry. People magazine called her America's New Sweetheart. And then came the backlash against Daniel Crawford. People were furious about what he had said before Mary's performance. His comment, "She can't possibly win," had become the most talked about moment of the year. Social media was filled with angry posts calling him arrogant and cruel. Some people demanded that he be fired from the show. Others dug up old clips of him being harsh to other contestants and shared them everywhere. Daniel's reputation was falling apart. 3 days after the audition, he posted a video on his social media. He looked tired. His eyes were red, like he had not been sleeping. When he spoke, his voice was quieter than Mary had ever heard it. "I want to address what happened at the audition," he said. "What I said about Mary Thompson before she sang was wrong. It was cruel and judgmental, and I am deeply ashamed of it." He paused and took a breath. "I have spent so many years in this industry that I forgot why I started. I forgot that music is about heart, not appearance. Mary reminded me of that. She taught me something I desperately needed to learn." He looked directly into the camera. "Mary, if you're watching this, I am truly sorry. Not because the world is angry at me, but because you deserved better. You deserved to walk onto that stage and feel welcomed, not judged. I hope someday you can forgive me." The video got almost as many views as Mary's audition. A week later, the show's producers arranged for Daniel and Mary to meet privately before the next round of the competition. Mary was nervous about seeing him again. She did not know what to expect. Part of her was still hurt by what he had said. But another part of her understood something important. People make mistakes. People say things they don't mean. And people can change. When Daniel walked into the room, Mary could see it immediately. He was different. The arrogance was gone. In its place was something that looked like genuine regret. "Thank you for agreeing to meet me," he said quietly. Mary nodded. They sat across from each other at a small table. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Daniel looked at her, with tears in his eyes. "I've been doing this job for 15 years, he said. "Somewhere along the way, I became the person I never wanted to be. Cold. Cynical. I stopped seeing people as people. I just saw them as contestants. Numbers. Ratings." He shook his head slowly. "And then you walked onto that stage. And you reminded me why music matters. Why any of this matters." Mary listened without interrupting. "You didn't just sing a song," Daniel continued. "You opened yourself up completely. You showed everyone who you really are. And that takes more courage than anything I've ever done." Mary reached across the table and put her hand on his. "I forgive you," she said simply. Daniel looked surprised. "Just like that? Just like that?" Mary said. "I've spent too many years of my life carrying heavy things. Anger is too heavy. I'd rather let it go." When they stood up to leave, Daniel hugged her. It was not a polite hug. It was real. And when they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. The competition continued. And Mary advanced through each round. The quarterfinals. The semifinals. Every time she performed, millions of people tuned in to watch. She was not the flashiest contestant. She did not have backup dancers or elaborate costumes. She just stood on stage in simple dresses and sang. But that was enough. More than enough. She chose songs that meant something to her. Songs about love and loss and hope. Songs about ordinary people living ordinary lives. And every single time, she connected with the audience in a way that no other contestant could match. The other contestants were younger and more polished. They had professional training and expensive teams behind them. But they did not have what Mary had. They did not have her story. The semifinals were the hardest round yet. Mary was up against a 23-year-old singer named Rebecca, who had trained at one of the best music schools in the country. Rebecca was talented. There was no denying that. Her voice was technically perfect, but when Mary took the stage that night, something magical happened again. She sang a song about a mother's love. She thought about Lucy, Thomas, and Grace while she sang. She thought about all those nights she worked late so they could have shoes that fit. All those mornings she woke up exhausted but kept going anyway. When she finished, the audience was on their feet once more. The judges gave her a standing ovation, and even Rebecca, her competitor, was clapping with tears in her eyes. The results came in. Mary had made it to the finals. She called her children that night. One by one. Lucy cried. Thomas told her how proud he was. And Grace, the daughter who had started all of this, said something Mary would never forget. "I always knew you were special, Mom. The world is just finally catching up." Mary hung up the phone and sat alone in her hotel room. The finals were 1 week away. One more performance. One more chance to show the world who she was. She was not scared anymore. She was ready. The night of the finale arrived faster than Mary expected. She stood backstage, listening to the roar of the crowd on the other side of the curtain. 15,000 people had packed into the arena. Millions more were watching from their homes across the country. And somewhere in that massive audience, her 3 children were sitting together, waiting to see their mother perform one last time. Mary looked down at her hands. They were the same hands that had scrubbed thousands of hotel toilets. The same hands that had changed countless bed sheets. The same hands that had held her dying husband and wiped her children's tears. These hands had worked so hard for so long. Tonight, they were trembling. A production assistant touched her shoulder. 5 minutes, Mary." She nodded and closed her eyes. In the darkness behind her eyelids, she saw Robert's face. He was smiling at her, the way he always did. She could almost hear his voice saying the words he used to tell her every single day. "You are extraordinary, Mary. Don't ever forget that." She opened her eyes and took a deep breath. She was ready. The host walked onto the stage and the crowd exploded with applause. He smiled and waved, waiting for the noise to die down before speaking. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we crown the winner of American Dream Star. We started this season with over 50,000 hopefuls from across the country. Now, only 2 remain." He paused dramatically. "Please welcome our first finalist, the incredible Rebecca Andrews." Rebecca walked out to thunderous applause. She looked stunning in a sparkling silver dress. Her hair and makeup absolutely perfect. She performed a powerful pop song with backup dancers and flashing lights. It was polished. Professional. Exactly what you would expect from a future star. When she finished, the crowd gave her a standing ovation. The judges praised her performance. Everything about it was flawless. Then came Mary's turn. "And now," the host said, his voice softening, "please welcome a woman who has captured the hearts of millions. A mother. A widow. A hotel housekeeper who reminded us all that dreams have no expiration date. Ladies and gentlemen, Mary Thompson." Mary walked onto the stage slowly. She wore a simple navy blue dress. No sparkles, no sequins. Just a plain dress that she had picked out herself. Her hair was pulled back the same way she wore it to work every day. She looked nothing like a star. And that was exactly the point. The arena fell silent as Mary took her place in the center of the stage. Before the music started, Mary did something unexpected. She spoke. "I want to say something before I sing," she said, her voice quiet but clear. "A few months ago, I was invisible. I cleaned hotel rooms and nobody knew my name. I had given up on my dreams because I thought dreams were for young people. For special people. Not for someone like me." She paused, feeling the weight of 15,000 people listening to every word. "But I was wrong. Dreams don't care how old you are. They don't care what job you have or how much money is in your bank account. Dreams are patient. They wait for us. And if we're brave enough to chase them, they're still there." Tears were already forming in her eyes, but she kept going. This song is for everyone who has ever felt invisible. For every mother working 2 jobs to feed her kids. For every father who gave up his own dreams so his children could have better ones. For everyone who has ever been told they're not good enough. She looked directly into the camera. You are enough. You have always been enough. And it's never too late to let the world hear your voice. The music began. Mary had chosen a song called You Raise Me Up. It was a song about finding strength through love, about being lifted higher than you ever thought possible. She had sung it at Robert's funeral, standing beside his coffin with tears streaming down her face. Tonight, she would sing it one more time. The first verse came out soft and gentle. Mary's voice floated through the arena like a whisper, drawing everyone closer. People leaned forward in their seats, afraid to miss a single note. As the song built, so did Mary's voice. It grew stronger and fuller, filling every corner of that massive space. The emotion behind each word was so raw, so real, that people in the audience started crying before she even reached the chorus. In the front row, Lucy grabbed Thomas's hand. Grace was already sobbing into a tissue. They watched their mother transform before their eyes. This was not the tired woman who had raised them. This was someone else. Someone powerful. Someone beautiful. Someone who had been hiding inside their mother all along. When Mary hit the high note in the final chorus, something incredible happened. The entire audience rose to their feet. Not just a few people. Everyone. 15,000 people standing as one, lifting Mary up with their applause and their tears and their love. She held that note longer than she ever had before. It soared through the arena and out into the night, reaching millions of people watching on their televisions at home. Grandmothers in nursing homes, single mothers working night shifts, teenagers who felt like nobody understood them. They all heard Mary's voice, and for a moment, they felt less alone. The song ended, and Mary stood in silence, tears streaming down her face. The applause was deafening. It went on and on, wave after wave of sound crashing over her. The judges were all standing. Patricia Wells was crying openly. William Chen was shaking his head in disbelief. And Daniel Crawford, the man who had once said she could not win, was applauding harder than anyone. The host walked back onto the stage, clearly moved by what he had just witnessed. He waited several minutes for the crowd to calm down before speaking. That was absolutely incredible, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Now, the moment we've all been waiting for. The votes have been counted. America has made its decision. Mary and Rebecca stood side by side, holding hands. Rebecca leaned over and whispered something in Mary's ear. Whatever happens, you deserve this. Mary squeezed her hand in gratitude. The host opened the envelope slowly. The entire arena held its breath. The winner of American Dream Star is. He paused. The silence was unbearable. Mary Thompson. The arena exploded. Confetti rained down from the ceiling. Music blasted through the speakers. Mary fell to her knees, overcome with emotion. She could not believe it. After everything she had been through, after all the years of struggle and sacrifice, she had won. Her children rushed onto the stage and wrapped their arms around her. Lucy was laughing and crying at the same time. Thomas kept saying, "I'm so proud of you, Mom," over and over. Grace just held her tight and would not let go. In the weeks that followed, Mary's life changed completely. She signed a recording contract and released her first album. It debuted at #1. She appeared on talk shows and magazine covers. She performed at sold-out concerts where thousands of people sang along to every word. But the most important thing Mary did was start a foundation. She called it Second Chances. It provided scholarships and support for adults who wanted to pursue their dreams later in life. Within a year, it had helped over 500 people go back to school, start businesses, and chase goals they had given up on long ago. Mary never forgot where she came from. She still visited the Grand Palace Hotel sometimes. She hugged the housekeepers and told them her story. She wanted them to know that their lives could change too. because that was the real lesson of Mary's journey. It was never about winning a competition or becoming famous. It was about something much bigger. It was about believing in yourself when nobody else does. It was about finding the courage to try, even when you're terrified. And it was about proving that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. Mary Thompson had been invisible for 51 years. But now, the whole world could see her, and they would never forget her voice.